Emily stumbled forward, her flashlight flickering like a dying heartbeat. The school hallway seemed to stretch into an endless, unnatural abyss, a space far beyond any normal building layout. Every single step she took echoed with a sickening clarity, as if the very walls of the school were mocking her, playing with her. Then, from the corner of her eye, she caught a flicker of movement. Figures darting between the shadows. They were silent but undeniably human students. Or, at least, they looked like students once. Their uniforms were torn, stained with dirt and something darker. Their faces were a ghostly white, their eyes hollow, empty pits of despair. They began to whisper, a chilling unison that slithered through the air and wrapped around her neck. "You cannot leave, not tonight." Panic, cold and sharp, stabbed into Emily's chest. She tried to run, to sprint, to get away, but the floor beneath her feet seemed to melt, stretching like thick, black liquid, slowing her down, holding her in place. A door appeared suddenly at the far end of the hall, glowing with a faint, sickly light. The principal's office. But it was wrong. The windows were spider-webbed with cracks, spilling a cold, greenish fog that rolled across the floor like a silent tide. As she drew closer, a voice sliced through the shadows. "You shouldn't be here." Emily froze, her blood turning to ice. From the deepest darkness emerged Mr. Holloway, or what was left of him. His eyes were pitch black voids, and his mouth was twisted into a grotesque grin far too wide to be human. "Emily, class has started," he whispered, his voice a horrifying chorus layered with the echoes of dozens of others. With a deafening crack, the office door swung open, a violent gust of wind sucking her inside. The room wasn't an office anymore. It was a twisted, nightmarish classroom. Desks were arranged in a perfect circle, each one occupied by a shadowy figure of a child. Their faces were indistinct blurs, but their eyes glowed with a faint, malevolent light. Scrawled across the chalkboard in what looked like chalk dust mixed with dried blood were the words, "Welcome to midnight class." Emily's radio crackled to life, hissing with static, and then a voice came to her own voice, distorted and terrifying. "Sit or stay forever." The lone chair at the center of the circle moved on its own, sliding across the dusty floor, scraping against the wood. It was an invitation, not an order. She backed away, her heart hammering against her ribs, but the chair stopped directly in front of her. Before she could even scream, a hand shot out from beneath it, an impossibly cold hand that grabbed her wrist with crushing strength. Learn or become part of the lesson. Suddenly, the desks rose into the air, spinning slowly like a macabre carousel. The children inside them began to laugh, a hollow, echoing laughter that clawed at Emily's sanity, threatening to tear it apart. Books flew from the shelves, swirling in midair, forming black tornadoes of paper and binding. Emily ducked just as one slammed into the wall behind her, splintering into 1,000 pieces. Bell tolled, a deep, menacing sound that resonated not in her ears but in her bones. The shadows of the students began to merge, swirling together, their individual forms dissolving into one towering, monstrous figure. Its voice was a cacophony of screams, whispers, and cries. "You cannot leave the school. Not tonight. Not ever." Emily screamed, "Hurrah!" Ragged sound swallowed by the chaos. She bolted for the door, but the hallway was gone. In its place was an endless, swirling void of green mist, beckoning her to step into oblivion. The walls themselves seemed to breathe, whispering her name, growing louder and more insistent with each frantic beat of her heart. Without warning, a desk plummeted from the ceiling, crashing onto the floor with enough force to shake the entire room. Papers exploded outwards, covering Emily like a sudden grim snowfall. As she pushed them away, she saw them. Photographs, pictures of students she recognized, current students from the school. Every single one of them had the same blackened, hollow eyes. "They came before, you will follow," the shadows hissed, the voice seeming to come from everywhere at once. Emily stumbled backward, crashing hard against the principal's desk. The drawers flew open on their own, spilling out vials of dark, viscous liquid and twisted notes written in a language she couldn't comprehend. A note glowed with a faint internal light. It read, "At midnight, the school awakens. All who remain join the class." The swirling storm of shadows grew closer, its form solidifying, becoming more real, more terrifying. Emily's heartbeat pounded in her ears, a frantic drum against the encroaching silence. She tried to call for help, to scream again, but no sound came out. Her voice was trapped, strangled in her throat. From the far corner of the room, a new figure appeared. A small girl, no older than 10, Her uniform was tattered, her eyes just as hollow as the others, but they glimmered with a terrifying intelligence. She raised a single, slender finger and pointed directly at Emily. "You will teach them," she whispered, her voice ancient and cold. The floor beneath Emily's feet cracked open, revealing a dark, gaping void. Whispers flooded out, the voices of students trapped here for decades, maybe centuries. The midnight class never ends. Emily's flashlight clattered to the floor, its beam bouncing wildly across the room. In its frantic light, she saw the walls. They were covered in countless handprints, smeared in a black, sticky substance, all reaching for her, trying to pull her into the very structure of the building. A scream echoed from somewhere above, or maybe it was inside her own head. The towering shadow loomed over her, its fingers stretching, clawing, ready to drag her into the swirling abyss of the school soul. Desperation seized her. She lunged toward a small window, pounding on the glass, trying to break through, but it was impossibly thick, as hard as steel. She was trapped. The school was alive, and it had no intention of ever letting her go. The whispers escalated into screams, the shadows solidified into grasping claws, and Emily felt herself being lifted from the floor, invisible hands carrying her, pulling her toward the walls. The glowing girl's eyes pierced her mind, a final chilling command. Class is in session forever. Emily's last thought before the darkness swallowed her completely was the eerie, final sound of the school bell tolling the hour of midnight. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Let me know in the comments what you think happened to Emily. Until next time, stay safe. Emily's scream was swallowed by the void, a soundless shriek into absolute darkness. For a heart-stopping moment, there was nothing. Then a new sound crept in, faint at first, then chillingly clear. School children singing, but these weren't cheerful nursery rhymes. They were old solemn hymns, twisted into unsettling minor keys, echoing from hallways she couldn't see. She gasped, a ragged breath tearing through her lungs, and her eyes flew open. She was back in the classroom, but it was all wrong. The walls seemed to weep, thick black ink bleeding down them in slow, viscous trails. The hands on the wall clock spun backward, a frantic, silent countdown to nothing. And on the chalkboard, the same terrifying welcome remained. Welcome to midnight class. Emily staggered to her feet, her legs shaking uncontrollably. The once empty desks were filled again. Each seat was occupied by a student, their bodies lifeless, their eyes staring blankly ahead. As she moved, their heads turned in perfect, eerie unison, tracking her every step. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "What do you want from me?" A dozen voices, a chorus of children, teachers, and unseen echoes answered as one. Stay, learn, teach, become. An unnatural cold seeped into the room. Frost crept up the walls in crystalline patterns, and her breath blown white in the air. The floor began to tremble, a low thrumming that vibrated through the soles of her shoes. Then she saw her, the small ghost girl, the one who had pointed at her from the hallway. This time, she wasn't hiding. She stood atop the teacher's desk, a small, still figure against the bleeding chaos. "They made us stay." The girl's voice was a fragile whisper. "So now we make others." Emily took a hesitant step forward. Who did this to you?" The ghost girl offered a faint, broken smile. Her teeth were gray and cracked like old porcelain. "The school itself," she said. "It wakes when the last bell rings. It feeds on what it taught, fear." Suddenly, high-pitched ringing pierced the air, so sharp it felt like a needle in her brain. The desks shook violently. The children, still in their seats, began to scream, not in pain, but in what sounded like pure, horrifying delight. "Midnight, midnight, the school is awake," they chanted. One by one, the ceiling lights burst, showering the room in sparks that fell like sinister fireflies. Panic seized Emily. She fumbled for the radio on her belt, her fingers clumsy with fear. Central Command. "This is Investigator Parker. Does anyone copy?" Static hissed back at her. Then, a voice crackled through, distorted and familiar. Her own voice. "You shouldn't have come back, Emily." She froze, the blood turning to ice in her veins. The radio slipped from her grasp, clattering onto the floor. From the shattered doorway, Principal Holloway's twisted form stepped through once more, his shadow stretched, impossibly long and distorted, swallowing the room in an encroaching darkness. Every student who died here, every teacher who stayed. His voice deepened, layered with the echoes of hundreds of screams. They all belonged to the lesson. His face began to peel away like old wallpaper. revealing dozens of other faces writhing beneath teachers, students, all merging into one hideous, grinning visage. Emily scrambled backward, her mind screaming, "I'm not part of this. I won't be." Holloway's multi-faced grin widened. "You already are." The ground beneath her feet cracked open. Through the fissures, she saw an abyss filled with endless rows of desks submerged in shadow. Bodies sat perfectly still in each one, their faces half buried in the darkness. The missing students, the lost investigators, the true midnight class. She spun around, sprinting for the exit, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The door slammed shut just as she reached it. She pounded on the wood, her fists raw, but it was solid as stone. Behind her, a deafening screech filled the room as every student stood up in perfect, horrifying unison. "The bell will ring. The bell will ring. The bell will bong." The final deafening chime of midnight. The entire building convulsed. Ceiling tiles rained down. Lockers burst open, spilling a grotesque mix of notebooks and bones onto the floor. The windows turned pitch black, and every reflective surface, every shard of glass, every polished doorknob no longer showed Emily's terrified face. Instead, hundreds of dead students stared back at her. The ghost girl appeared right beside her, her voice now a soft, sorrowful whisper. "Run, if you can, but the doors, they only lead back inside." Emily didn't hesitate. She twisted the knob, the door flew open, and she bolted into the hallway, running for her life. But the hallway twisted, the walls warped, and she found herself stumbling back through the very same doorway into the same classroom she had just fled. "No, no, let me out," she screamed, her voice raw with terror. The chalkboard began to write on its own, the chalk scratching loudly in the sudden silence. In bright red, bloody letters, it spelled out the words, "Class dismissed." The floor gave way completely. Emily plunged into darkness, tumbling through an endless void. Voices whispered all around her, a phantom symphony of laughter, sobs, and the relentless scrape of chalk on a board. She landed hard. When she finally looked up, blinking against a sudden light, she was in a perfectly clean, normal version of the school. Daylight streamed through the windows. The halls were pristine. Everything was peaceful. Her radio crackled to life on her belt. "Emily, it's command." You went silent for hours. "Did you find anything?" Emily stared at the radio, her body still trembling from an adrenaline that had nowhere to go. She took a slow, shuddering breath. It's fine," she heard herself say, her voice hollow. "The school's fine." She stood up, her movements stiff. The halls were empty, quiet. She walked past a large trophy case, its glass gleaming in the morning sun. Then she froze. Inside the case, nestled among the dusty awards, was a new photograph. A class photo, and there she was at the front of the classroom, a piece of chalk in her hand. Her eyes were solid black. A single school bell rang, a clear, bright sound. But this time, only she could hear it. If you ever find a school that still echoes after midnight, don't go inside, because some lessons never end. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe